All right, this is lesson 3.2. 3.2. That lesson went really fast.
How would you show this one?
3.2, this is one-step equations. Equations, and I'm abbreviating equations with Eqns. One-step equations, and now we're going to multiply, divide. We just did one-step equations with adding and subtracting. So now we're going to do multiply, divide. It's really the same thing that we have been doing. We're still looking for inverse operations. But now we're going to deal with multiplication and division. It says, recall that multiplication and division are inverse operations. Remember, that's our first vocab word, or vocab phrase is inverse operations. To solve one-step equations involving multiplication and division, follow the same step you use to solve equations using addition and subtraction. Okay, so we're going to be doing the exact same thing as far as our steps are concerned. So who remembers what our first step was in the previous lesson? Find the variable. Locate the variable. So, in number 1, locate the variable, which is right here next to that 3. Equal sign still creates two sides of the equation. Remember in math, when things are smashed together, what does that mean? Multiplication, right? So, this 3 and x are being multiplied together. The 3 is on the same side. So to get rid of that 3, the opposite of multiplication is what?
Division.
Division. So this is what it should look like. This is how you show your work. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. That's a fraction, which means division. So you're going to divide by 3 on each side. Now on the left side, we know that 3 over 3 canceled just to be... What is 3 divided by 3? What is 3 divided by 3? 1. Leaves you with 1x. What's 36 divided by 3? Remember, it is 12. You can use your multiplication sheet. You use it opposite, though, right? You find your 3 column and find where the 36 is. We get 12. Now, question. Do we have to put this 1x? Is it the same thing if I just put x? It is the same thing. Which means x is by itself. All x's are always going to have a 1. So if we get it to be a 1, then it is, quote, by itself. If I were to check this, I'm going to plug my 12 in for that x. So I have 3 times 12. Does that equal 36? Well, we know that 3 times 12 is 36. So 36 does equal 36. So x is 12 is our answer. Okay, number 2. Your variable is that m over there on the right side. We can draw our equal sign. Are we going to get rid of the negative 108 or are we getting rid of that 9? Christina, what do you think? The 108 or the 9? What should we get rid of? 9. Why should we get rid of the 9? You're right. Because it's next to the what? It's next to the m. It's next to our variable, and our goal is to get the variable by itself. It's being multiplied, so how do we get rid of it? Divide it. And you're going to use the way that I showed you, which means you're putting your line. That means divide. So 9 over 9... Have a seat. 9 over 9. Whoa. Leaves you with m. And what is negative 108 divided by 9? Now, don't shout it out. Use your multiplication table. Find your 9 row or column and find over where 108 is. And look up. And we're getting what? 12, but a positive or a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So this should be a negative 9. I'm sorry, negative 12. Negative 12. Woo, sorry.
Hold on.
Okay? Why don't you try number 3, please? Make sure you're showing your work on number 3. Remember to locate your variable. Just a minute. Try something. Good question. So we need to move that 10 off of there. If I divide each side by 10, what is a negative 10 divided by a positive 10?
Negative.
A negative 1. So if I end up with negative n, is n actually by itself? No, there's a negative 1 with it. We have never had a negative variable. You should never have a negative variable. So how do we not get a negative variable? What do we need to do when we divide? We need to make sure that this 10 is negative. So when we divide, we need to make sure that 10 is negative. Okay, so that leaves me with n. What is negative 50 divided by negative 10? Positive 5. Excellent. Terry, Jose, can you give Terry a high five, please? Any questions on number 3? If we were to check this, right? Negative 10 times 5, does that equal negative 50? Yes. Negative 50 does equal negative 50. All right, let's look at number 5. Number 5 looks a little bit different. Why? Because it's a fraction, which means it's actually a what kind of problem? It's actually a division problem, right? So the opposite of division is multiplication. So we're still locating our variable. So we still have this x here. And then what's on the same side as x that we need to get rid of? The 17, right? And so if I'm dividing by 17, in order to get that off of there, I need to multiply, which is the opposite. So I'm going to multiply by 17. This is how you show your work. You put the little dot, which means times. You put your 17 there. 17 is really over 1. And when we do this, we're canceling these 17s out. So when you multiply by 17, you're actually canceling them out so that the only thing left on that side is x. What do we need to do next? Take it away from 17? Away from 17? Multiply the 3 by 17, right? Because whatever we do on one side, we have to do on the other side. So we're going to show our work, please, and put your times 17 over here. Please, please, please show your work. Even if you think this is super simple, please show your work. 3 times 17, Mandy? 51. And if we were to check this, I'm putting this 51 in for the x. 51 over 17, does that equal 3? Well, if you do 51 divided by 17, you are getting 3. So 51 is our answer. Questions on number 5? Okay, let's look at number 6. Still finding our variable. Remember, that's the first thing. Locate your variable. And I like to draw my line to figure out which side I'm on. Alicia, what do you think we need to get rid of in number 6? The negative 2. I would agree with that. And how are you going to get rid of the negative 2? Great. It's being divided. So if it's being divided, the opposite of division is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply by -2, which cancels. But on both sides, I'm multiplying by -2. So on the left side, I'm left with v. And on the right side, Sierra, what's 16 times -2? -32. Excellent. And then if I were to plug this back in, -32 over -2, does that equal 16? Yes.
How do you get 32?
Right here, 16 times a -2. Right, because we multiplied. It was the opposite of division, so we multiplied. You're doing opposite things. I'd like for you to try number 7, please.
It's y over -8, so I change that to times -8 instead of divided by.
Okay.
So I took the -8 away from that right side, and then times -2 and -8.
Okay.
16. So 1 equals 16.
Okay, so Jeremy's saying he multiplied each side by -8 because that was getting rid of it by the variable. -8 times -2 is 16. Is it okay to leave it backwards like this?
Yes.
It is. You don't have to change it around for me. Questions on that one? Okay, flip over please and do number 11. Interesting. What are you running into with 11? Isn't P already by itself?
There's 1.
There's a 1. But what did we say the variable can never be? Negative. And is this variable negative? Okay. So we know there's really an invisible 1 there. And so now you have -1p times, -1 times p. So we have a multiplication problem, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So in order for us to get this one, we're going to have to get rid of that -1. We get rid of it by dividing. -1 over -1 cancels, so I have p by itself without a negative. -16 divided by -1 is +16. Seems like a lot of work for a variable that already felt like it was by itself, but indeed it wasn't because it had that -1 with it. Show your work just like this. Divide by -1, divide by -1.
Do we have to put the 16 by the variable?
No, because you're not multiplying by 16. You're getting rid of the -1. Right? Oh, you mean to check it?
Yeah.
Oh, so Mandy was asking about how do we check this one. So you would have, does 16 equal -1 times -16? Oh, wait, I did this backwards. There. And yes, -16 does equal -16. Okay, let's do some translation. So number 13 says the product, and remember we already talked about what does product mean. Product means times. So we know we're going to do multiplication, however you want to write that, times or your little dot. A number and 5, what do we use for a number? A, B, C, D, all the way through Z, whatever you want. Is, there's my is, which means equals, right? Is 30. So the product of a number and 5 is 30. So we know that something equals 30, right? We know that. And then it says a number and 5. How do we represent A and 5 being multiplied? There are a couple ways we could do it. What's one way we could do it? Mackenzie?
5A.
Mackenzie said 5A. Does that mean 5 times A?
Yeah.
Okay. What's another way we could do it?
Parentheses around 5.
Parentheses around 5 and A. Okay. Is there another way we could do this? 5 dot A. Could you do this? A dot 5? You could. The most common way you're going to see it, and I would encourage you to do it this way, is to do 5A. Put your coefficient first and then your variable. I would not separate them by a parenthesis. I would not separate them by a dot. Just smash them together. Okay, try 14, please. A number divided by 5. Do we care what that number is? We're going to say A divided by, here's our 5. Is means equals in math, right? Okay, so a number divided by 5 is negative 13. If you wrote your division problem like this, A divided by 5 equals negative 13, I would not suggest that. I would not suggest this. This is what you guys are going to be used to seeing in your problems, so I would start writing it that way. A divided by 5 is negative 13. Any questions about 13 or 14? Or this lesson? All right. Yeah. What'd you say? Not 1. We don't know what the number is. So when it says a number, you get to choose whatever variable you want. So you could say x over 5, you could say b over 5, you could say j over 5, but you don't get to pick whatever the number is. You get to pick whichever variable you want to sub in for that number. Okay, turn to page 7, please. Turn to page 7, and I'd like for you to do 1 through 15 odd on page 7. When you get done with page 7, you need to turn back to page 6 and do that maze, which is a review. Okay? That's going to finish us up today. You guys are going to fly through these. Please make sure you are showing your work. 1 through 15 odd on page 7. Then flip back to page 6. Show your work on the paper, please.
Sorry.